our friend up here in front, right? So let's say we actually collect this data on the rig. We measure temperature, we measure pressure, we measure vibrations, we measure all these other things, right? And what a lot of times what happens is things are reactive, right? So we see something has spoiled, or we see something has gone wrong, and then we go and fix it, and there's downtime on the rig, and we're not, operations aren't running as smoothly like before. Now imagine if you had a model that was trained on the previous data that we've had. Let's say this rig has been operational for 5 years, right? So we have data, temperature data from year 1, temperature for year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, whatever, right? Imagine if we feed all of that data, like we've been talking about, into a model, and it's able to predict, it's able to tell us, hey, watch out for this machine 1, or watch out for, so what we're going to do. Look through, it's a bunch of code. If you're not a coder, don't freak out, right? It's just numbers, don't be intimidated. I'll explain a little bit what it is. So like I said, I gave you that scenario. We have all this data, and we're going to kind of run it through this model. So one thing to point out is in the real world, right, you would have all this data and we'd put the code together and we'd throw it in. We don't have time. This is the real world, but we don't have time in our session today. So what I did was we just gave it some thresholds. We just said, okay, let's say that once temperature passes this particular point, it means failure mode. I said, don't be intimidated. Why? We were talking a bit about agency in our conversation earlier between sessions. Even if you don't know, right, that information is out there for you to find. So even if you don't have coders at your company, or even if you don't code yourself, you can get the information that you need to get the output that you need. Right? I didn't put the entire script together. I know just a little bit of code, right? But I prompted the AI tool. I actually did this with AI as another example. I prompted the tool. I said, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm running a session at Saipec. I want it to be this particular output. I want people to learn this, but I need to use some numbers so it makes it really practical for them. Help me clean up this code. Here's a little bit of what I want to do. Clean it up for me. And then I went in and refined it, and I got it to where I wanted it to be. So we talked about agency. Anything that you need is actually within your fingertips, and AI makes that even more practical and real for you. Next slide. Okay, so I think we've talked about this a lot, right? Temperature spikes might indicate overheating motors. That means it's probably going to fail soon. Or inconsistent pressure means, hey, something might be going wrong. So this tool is a predictive tool, right? It's telling you ahead of time that something might happen rather than reactively, which is usually what we do. The rig is down, we're not making money, in fact, we're losing money, right? We're losing efficiency, all of this. Mr. Sai probably can relate when there are issues and how costly, it is. So that's what something like this could do. That's kind of one of the use cases for AI. Okay, so let's make it practical. We have somebody here, I love agency. This is good. He's already gone ahead and run the model. So let's go to the next slide. Next slide. Let's keep it here in step 2. Okay, so click run. If I give him Dockers, he deserves a very big prize for that. He went ahead, he didn't even wait for my instructions. I love it. So click run. You should see the little, it's like a play button. Any issues? Yeah, just do run anyway. And then click that play button. Are you guys good here? Okay, I'm coming. You've done this before, so why not help her? So hit the play button up here. So what do you notice? It's giving you this output, right? And it was just with my particular code that I said it will have this output, right? If you wanted something else that worked with your company or your own use case, you could do that. But what has it shown us? It's been able to highlight, so these are different machine IDs. It's telling you machine 1, machine 2, machine 3, right? All the differences, the compressors and the whatever else on the rig. It's telling you, hey, watch out for 4 and 5. Watch out for 7, right? Those are likely to fail soon. So what can you do? You can actually go ahead of time and do your maintenance. You can go ahead of time and replace machines, right? Think about how expensive things are now for companies in Nigeria. Now imagine if you could be ahead of the game, right? A month ahead, 2 months ahead, because rather than waiting for things to fail, then you have to contact your supplier in China, then they come, the money, they'll tell you the price has increased. You can get ahead of that. Excellent. So think about what are some of the other scenarios that might be applicable to you. Earlier, we did some kind of low-level, maybe like marketing type things. If I was in like a marketer or a sales engineer, at our company, I'm putting together a deck, and I needed certain stills and images, I could prompt that with AI. Now we're using a more kind of technical example, right? If I was an engineer at one of these companies, and I needed something, this is the output that I could get. With AI, you'd be able to analyze months of data in seconds, right? You'd be able to do a task that took you hours before in seconds, right? So think about some of those scenarios that are relevant to you. You see the output there? Did you scroll all the way to the bottom? So scroll all the way, yeah. Excellent, excellent. Okay, next slide. So we're going to do one more chatbot exercise. So for those of us in Collab, go to Gemini. There's the Gemini tab right on the side there. It's on the right there, yeah. Have you found it? So go to Gemini. This is a Google tool, so Gemini is built in. We're just giving you another example. You could go to ChatGPT, but you'd have to give it some more information. And then we're going to give it this information. It's a huge prompt. But notice how much more detailed this was from our very first prompt that we did, right? Who was here at the very first half of the session? But just a simple prompt, like give me the top 3 trends of the energy industry in Nigeria. This is so much more detailed. I'm telling it, hey, I'm managing maintenance on my team, in my company. I have all this data that I've done. I've outputted it through a model. I put it through a model and I've gotten this output. Help me create a maintenance plan. Maybe I'm the safety engineer or the maintenance engineer, and I need a plan, right? Something that, again, would have taken me probably a lot longer to do. Now, again, we had that conversation earlier on ethics and whatever else. It's not like you would just put it in maintenance plan and you're not going to copy it and submit that to your boss. That's probably not the best thing to do, right? You would refine it. You would make sure it's as applicable to you as possible. You'd maybe give it more information. We talked about prompt engineering earlier. So maybe the first kind of plan that it gave you, I'm like, no, I need it in this particular format, or this is how we've done it before in industry. Maybe you upload a sample report. I do that a lot. I was telling them, what I do sometimes with my work on the side. I'll give them like, hey, here's an example of how I've done it in the past. So make sure the output is similar to that. Make sure you follow that same example. So it's kind of a long prompt. Feel free to keep it simple, but remember, the more information that you give, the more detailed it is. So I'm managing maintenance for an offshore energy company. I have sensor data from drilling equipment. Help me create a maintenance plan. Like I always say, these are good for strategic thinking, right? It's like having an assistant next to you can get your brain going. I'm going to repeat what I said because we have our friend in the audience. Remember, these things are not going to be perfect when they're outputted, right? Confirm the information is accurate. Make sure it's the same sort of style that you have used prior, right? It's up to you. You use AI. You get out of AI what you put into it, right? What you get out is what you put in. Okay. So you can add more information. Maybe for those of us still typing, you don't have to write the whole thing. Maybe give it some other information. Say, I want it as an Excel document, or I want it in this particular format. See what happens. Next slide. So just to wrap up here, AI is more than automation. It's not just, okay, automation already kind of exists, at least in a lot of our companies and our schools, right? We're already kind of up to breath with some of these things. But it's so much more, right? It's driving innovation right now. We don't want Africa to be left behind. We don't want Nigeria to be left behind. So enhance your decision making. You want to be competitive. Imagine if you're in an industry and 10% of the industry is already implementing AI in ways like this, and your company is still having arguments on whether AI is ethical or not. I'm not saying AI, these ethical conversations are important. I'm not trying to downplay them. But we definitely cannot afford to be left behind, right? It's a global race, and it's happening. The tools are already here. Getting started with AI is easier than you think, right? I talked to a bunch of students earlier, and they're like, oh, how do I begin? I assume you're students. You gave me a little, okay. You gave me, not you, ma, I was talking about you. You gave me a look. I'm like, oh, you definitely are a student. Anyway, so I talked to some students earlier, and they're like, how do I get started? Like, I want to do this, and maybe I didn't learn it in school. It's easier than you think, right? Some of these things are available to you already. And what we've done is we've shown you some of these use cases. So as simple as just summarizing documents, summarizing reports, but also more technical, right? If you're an engineer, a chemical engineer, petroleum engineer, right? There are things that you can do here to practical applications that you can utilize. And then, like I always say, AI is for every day, right? Use it. Start using it. That's how you get better. It's a tool. We talked a bit about other technology innovations. When electricity first came about, people were anti-electricity. They said, yeah, it's true. They were they were like, we don't want fires in our house, whatever. Or when the telephone came about, they were like, you're speaking to a ghost. Don't put telephones in homes and schools. And obviously, over time, that changed, right? So AI is going to shape a lot of things. My skin in the game, our skin in the game as a company is to make sure that we as Nigerians, we as professionals, start thinking about what is possible and also have our own, our own piece of the pie. We're not left behind. All right, next slide. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. We're Oida Energy. My name is Chloe. Mr. Chooks was here earlier, one of our instructors. We're going to be around talking to folks later. If you're interested in chatting with us, come forward. Thank you very much for those of you who attended our session. Wonderful.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you so much. I'm guessing none of us have a question for Chloe. Does anybody have a question concerning the class she just had? Okay. All right. I know a lot of us are wondering, who are these people? Who are these people? What do they do? Well, we'll be having a technical section on all about Oida. That will be in about 10 minutes. We just want to clear up this place, reset, so you can come back. And we have a quiz at the end of that section. After knowing all about Oida, we're going to find out who actually listened and actually know about us. And we have an amazing prize for the persons, 3 persons, all right? So I'll see you guys back maybe in 5 or 10 minutes. Can just stretch a bit and look at other booths too. So I look forward to seeing you guys in 10 minutes, please. All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're supposed to come. Only for her to answer those questions, but not using his like